It was a cold and dark night when the silence enveloping the cities seemed to come alive. Imagine for a moment that you get on a bus at midnight, hoping to reach home after a long day. But what if that bus were marked by a strange curse, where every passenger who boarded it disappeared without a trace? This is the story of a night bus driver who becomes a witness to an unsettling phenomenon that leads him to question his own reality. The driver, a middle-aged man named Roger, had worked the same route for years, picking up the same passengers night after night. At first, he thought it was simply a routine, an endless cycle of picking up and dropping off passengers at the city stops. However, what began as an everyday story soon transformed into a true enigma. Every night, as they approached the old crossing where a tragic accident had occurred decades ago, the atmosphere grew palpable, as if an invisible presence awaited in the shadows. Roger noticed that upon passing that spot, his passengers seemed restless. Some even trembled, as if the air was thick with tension. Initially, he didn't pay much attention, but the disappearances began to be undeniable. A curly-haired woman, a young man who always listened to music with earbuds, an elderly man who never stopped talking about his family. One by one, they vanished during that leg of the journey, and the worst part was that the next day, new souls boarded the bus, as if they had never existed. The unsettling routine turned into a silent nightmare, and Roger, trapped in his role as the driver, could do nothing but watch. Whispers among new passengers began to grow louder. Many spoke to each other about the legend of the accident at the crossing, one that no one dared to mention aloud, as if simply bringing it up might attract disaster. As the weeks passed, Roger came to terms with the dread surrounding him. One night, a new passenger boarded the bus, a young man named Ethan, whose gaze reflected a mix of curiosity and unease. As the bus rolled on and the city blurred into darkness, Ethan, unaware of what awaited him, sat right in front of the driver. Roger looked at him through the rearview mirror, a reflection that felt more like a foreboding than a mere image. "Have you ever heard about the accident that happened here?" Ethan asked. Roger felt a shiver run down his spine, but he slowly nodded. "They say the door to that tragedy has never closed, that the spirits of those who died are still trapped here, on this route." Roger tried to downplay it, but Ethan's voice turned anxious. "I've been researching it. Maybe we can find a way to free those spirits, to help them rest in peace." The words struck a chord with Roger, who, although skeptical, couldn't ignore the connection he felt with the young man. That night, as they traversed the streets, the strange pact formed between the driver and the passenger. They decided that upon reaching the crossing, they would attempt to communicate with the lost souls, as if doing so could unleash the dark curse that had kept passengers imprisoned. With each kilometer they traveled, the air grew heavier, as if the very atmosphere were holding its breath. Upon reaching the infamous crossing, the bus came to a stop. Roger felt the outside world fade away, leaving only a deep silence. With his heart racing, he glanced around and heard Ethan's trembling voice. "Now we just need to talk to them. Let them know they're not alone." Just then, the lights of the bus began to flicker, and a thick fog started to envelop the vehicle. Roger felt a chill as the lights went out, but Ethan was determined. With a firm voice, he began calling out to the lost spirits, mentioning the names he had discovered in his research. Each name hung in the air like a prayer, and in that moment, something changed. The fog grew denser, and suddenly, ethereal figures began to appear, floating around the bus. Roger felt panic grip him, yet at the same time, a strange calm enveloped him. The faces of the disappeared reflected sadness and desperation, but also hope. Immediately, one of them, the curly-haired woman, approached Ethan, her eyes pleading. It was a surreal moment where life and death danced in the same space, and the voices of those who had passed began to whisper in a distant echo. "Thank you for coming," said the woman, and in her voice, one could sense the relief that emanated. Roger, unable to move his lips, felt a tear slide down his cheek. Could he really be helping? But when he looked again in the rearview mirror, he noticed that the fog began to dissolve, and the spirits seemed to fade slowly, as if the light of dawn was breaking the darkness. However, in their place, something else appeared, a dark shadow that seemed to swallow the light, a figure moving swiftly toward them. Terror gripped Roger's heart. It was as if a malevolent presence was feeding off the fear they radiated. The figures completely vanished, leaving Roger and Ethan all alone in front of a force that seemed to thrive on the tormented souls of the past. The bus, filled with cold sweat, shuddered as the figure approached them. "You cannot leave, not until you fulfill your purpose." A deep voice resonated in the air, like an echo of ancient resentment. "What do you want from us?" Roger shouted, as his mind raced at 1,000 miles per hour. The figure stopped, and a dark laughter filled the space, a sound that resonated in their bodies like a warning. "You have opened the door, now you must pay the price." Roger felt the weight of guilt and fear merge into a single blow as the figure charged at them. Without thinking, he started the bus's engine and made a sharp turn, speeding away from the crossing, trying to escape that presence. Every time they passed the crossing, Roger wondered if he could ever be the same again, if he could continue driving without feeling that he had left something behind. The night route became a cycle of terror and anxiety, and although they managed to escape that night, Roger knew that what he had witnessed had marked them forever. The story of Roger and Ethan, their souls in an ancient battlefield between life and death, would resonate through generations on the dark nights of the city. So, dear viewer, have you ever felt that something is watching you? Would you dare to board a bus at midnight, not knowing what might happen along the way? This tale is not just a story, it's a warning. If you want to hear more stories that will keep you awake at night, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and comment on what you thought of this story. There is always a door left ajar to the unknown, and you, dear friend, could be the next passenger.